Hello, and welcome to an emergency recording, one of multiple QB-related emergency recordings we've had to do this year of the Access Vikings podcast. I am Emily Leiker, joined by my Minnesota Star Tribune colleagues Ben Goessling and Andrew Krammer. And just an hour or two ago now, while we were at TCO Performance Center in Eagan, Kevin O'Connell announced that J.J. McCarthy has been placed in the concussion protocol. He showed some symptoms last night during the team's travel home following their loss to Green Bay, was evaluated at TCO and medical staff, both internally, and it sounded like maybe an independent review too, or maybe he was referring to independent at the game, determined that he needed to go in the protocol. O'Connell would not commit to whether Brosmer will be the one to start on Sunday against the Seahawks, who are the Vikings' next opponent. He said that they're really taking this day by day, seeing how McCarthy's going to do in the protocol and how the whole week unfolds. But Ben, just what's your instant analysis takeaway of what's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, it would be hard to imagine that if J.J. McCarthy's in the concussion protocol on a Monday, that he's out of it in time to get the prep work and be ready to start on Sunday. I would assume, barring some fairly significant turn of events, that Max Brosmer is going to start against the Seahawks. And we'll see how the week shakes out with McCarthy. One of the things O'Connell talked about is the last stage of it is being cleared for full contact, and you're not really going through full contact as a quarterback during a practice week. But, you quarterbacks have to go through this too. You have to figure those things out. I just think the idea, independent of how they're going to handle contact in practice, it seems hard for me to believe that McCarthy would be back to start on Sunday, in which case Brosmer gets the chance that a lot of people on social media, especially those with ties to Andrew and my alma mater, have been clamoring for him to get. So now we'll get to see if that goes that way, if he is in fact the answer to the Vikings' problems. And, I think it's a tough environment, tough place to play, tough assignment with that defense. But yeah, I would have to think that's how the week is going to go. I think you have to go in assuming that it's going to be Max Brosmer against the Seahawks on Sunday.
Yeah, it's just a disappointing turn for a kid who missed 20 of his first 22 starts to injury. Got the meniscus tear as a rookie. You've got the high ankle sprain. And obviously now this. I think Kevin O'Connell said at one point, it's not ideal, but I think those words can be used to describe a lot of what's gone on with this year's team, and especially this week, where they're going to have a truncated Thursday practice where they'll add some hours to Wednesday, add some hours to Friday in the building, so people can have time with their families on Thanksgiving. But this is not the week to be taking time off if you're preparing Max Brosmer for his first start. But that's how they're going to do it for the entire team, to try and be as fair as possible to everybody. It's an incredibly tough spot for them to be put in once again, in a season that's just got nothing but difficult spots.
Yeah, and Ben, you kind of alluded to this, but the Seattle defense is a difficult one for Brosmer to potentially make his debut against. For McCarthy, even if somehow he did clear protocol and was able to go on Sunday, but maybe hadn't been a full practice week for him, it would also be hard. They are fourth in the league in sacks right now with 36. They have had, I believe, 9 interceptions to this point, 4 forced fumbles and recoveries. So that, on top of the environment, on top of some of the storylines, which I know coaches and players say don't matter, but are present here with going to face Sam Darnold, like it creates an interesting storm for this team heading into Sunday. It's interesting. Kevin O'Connell was asked, Andrew, you asked him actually, what was the play, or did they know what play this occurred on? And he said no, that even McCarthy wasn't exactly sure when it occurred, but McCarthy took some hits yesterday.
Yeah, O'Connell said it must have been later in the game, referring obviously to 4 of the 5 sacks coming in the second half. The first sack wasn't even until, I believe, that hurry-up drive right before halftime. So the flurry of hits just came in that awful second half that we all talked about. But McCarthy throws some interceptions in that second half too that were some head-scratching decisions. And we've seen that with certain quarterbacks. I remember back with, I think Brock Purdy. Yeah, when Jordan Hicks hit him over the middle, and then I think he throws a pick when he stays in that game. We saw Tua Tagovailoa do that in Green Bay on Thanksgiving a couple years ago. This has happened with players, and we don't know. Again, we do not know. The team said they don't know, like Emily mentioned, when the concussion actually happened, but there's a lot of opinions out there on when it might have happened. All we know is that he took a lot of hits in that game, and obviously made some head scratching decisions. So it's just another ridiculous turn for this young kid's career, and one that's just really tough to see because, yeah, they kept him out there, but again, that happens. They have independent spotters to prevent those kinds of things, and obviously they did not see McCarthy acting in such a way to pull him from the game.
Yeah, the other play besides the obvious sacks where he took a pretty hard hit and has been one of the early ones floating around here, is a scramble late in the fourth quarter where he got brought down by Isaiah McDuffie. And that was another, like, not every hit that he took was in the pocket or a sack. He was also on the move a little bit and doing some other stuff. But yeah, they're not entirely sure there. I don't know if when we hear from O'Connell later this week, if they'll maybe have more of a determination of, yes, this is when it happened. Those things can be quite fickle sometimes, and it's sometimes more of a like buildup of those hits than here that hit was the one that did it. But we'll see how that goes the rest of the week. Ben, the other thing you asked about that I thought was important at the end of this one was if the Vikings would consider adding anyone to the quarterback room. Obviously, Carson Wentz is back in the building, but with a shoulder sling because he has had season-ending shoulder surgery. Now McCarthy is likely down this week. That leaves Brosmer and then John Wolford, who is still only on their practice squad. He has not been signed or not been elevated to the active roster even on game days just because of some roster size limits and other things they're working with. What did we hear about that, and what do we think could happen between now and Sunday to account for that?
Well, I mean, O'Connell said they'll look into things. Obviously, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and his staff will have a lot to say about where that goes. I think they're going to have to look at options. I mean, I can't imagine they're going to go through the week with just two quarterbacks healthy. And he talked about wanting John Wolford to probably get some scout team work because Max Brosmer was going to be doing quite a bit of that. So you probably have to have somebody else going through the Vikings game plan and learning their offense and being ready to go with that. I would think that they'll look at, and we're not talking about, a massive addition. Obviously we're past the trade deadline. There's only going to be so many guys you could bring in, but I would imagine they'll find somebody to come in and at least be able to help them have three options going through the week. I just think that that's probably going to be something they have to look at. I would not be surprised at all if there is a roster move of some type, probably before Wednesday. I mean, if you see them make an addition tomorrow, that would not be a huge change or a huge surprise, I should say, given where they're at. I think it's just probably going to be something they have to do to get through the week.
Yeah, they've gone through now a number of games with just two quarterbacks, but you're right. They've had three through practices, first, second team offense, scout team, all those things. So, but I've actually been kind of surprised. Ben, what have you thought about how they've gone into some of these weeks where they're like, we're fine with two? Because when they did that against Cleveland, they quickly realized, oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Yeah,
I mean, I think you'd probably want, they'll have to have obviously two on Sunday up, and John Wolford will come up from the practice squad. But yeah, when you've got, in this case, Max Brosmer has never had an NFL start. He's had a few snaps by this point, but John Wolford has not been here. Yeah, I would think you'd want to have another option there just in case you have to turn to somebody either because of injury or you just need another player to go to. Now, how you line those guys up is part of that question, because if you have an emergency third quarterback and he's designated the emergency player, he can only be turned to when the first two go down. So you have to figure out the order of all those things. I just think they're going to try to give themselves as many options as possible.
Ben, what do you think of Max Brosmer? Finish it off.
Yeah, I think we saw it in the preseason. We saw the decisiveness. They praised quite a bit of that with the way he read things out, read coverages. Obviously, that's preseason. You're not talking about game planned coverages in the preseason. You're not seeing teams that kind of go explicitly after Max Brosmer and kind of game plan for him. But I think they liked some of the anticipation he played with, some of the decisiveness that we saw. He'll have to do that in a regular season game now, where you have to get some of that decisiveness, that quick play speed, which I think JJ McCarthy has struggled with. If he can bring that to a regular season game, I think that's a benefit. They'll need a lot of that from him as we go forward here.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see Max as much as I'm sure we've heard the Brosmer bros. They are out there in full force. They want to see him, but I'm very interested to see because the inexperience we know well about, but when he has been out there, it has looked like the moment isn't too big for him. We saw that from a young JJ McCarthy in moments as well. We do know the inconsistency that comes with young quarterbacks, but Max is he 25?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think he's older.
Yeah,
than
he's
JJ is.
Yeah, he's a little more well-traveled, a little older, at least in terms of college experience, not an NFL experience. So we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be interesting in a Viking season that has been full of wild twists and turns.
And Kevin O'Connell, of course, expressed complete confidence in Max Brosmer. Should he have to start on Sunday, he talked about Max's preparation and the fact that he has been able, or they have been confident in him to step in some moments where their number one guy has gone down. He took a couple snaps in that Cleveland game, I believe, at the end of the first half. He played some against the Bengals in the week 3 blowout. So he's had some time to come out and maybe shake some of those jitters out, though obviously debut jitters, starter jitters are a little bit different. So we will see with him. Not much other news from Kevin O'Connell today. He did not have injury updates yet on Christian Darrisaw or Donovan Jackson, the 2 offensive linemen who exited yesterday's game, and neither on Joshua Metellus, who finished yesterday's game but had a couple trips to the medical tent. So we will be back, or rather probably only Ben and Andrew will be back on Wednesday to kind of catch you up with whatever the start of this week looks like for the Vikings, now that we know that McCarthy may not be ready to go. So thanks for tuning in.
And we cover the current and future Vikings quarterbacks. Emily will cover the past Vikings quarterback this week. So we will have all of it covered on all possible fronts.
Thanks for listening.